You'll have around 45 minutes.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. Great. Let's kick it off. Right. Well, thank you, everybody at the Singapore FinTech Festival. This is personally my first panel, so I'm very excited. It's going to be a very, very busy week with finalizing with a Deals Friday session at 5 p.m. We'll have a number of FinTechs pitching for funding to the investor community. But let's start with this panel. We've got a really interesting set of founders here who have come from a banking background, are serial entrepreneurs, and in some of the interesting clusters around or verticals around wealth management, investment, financial planning, and the CFO stack. So further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our four panelists. First of all, we have Joshua, who is the co-founder and CEO of File. We have Ashish, who is the founder of IND Money. And we also have Shadrima, who earlier this year exited Bento to the most exciting super apps we have in the region, Grab. And we also have Laurent, CEO and co-founder of BTO, Better Trade-Off. Fantastic. So with further ado, let's see which cameras are working. I think all microphones are working, but I'd also like to give the opportunity for each of our panelists to really introduce themselves and speak a little bit more about the fintechs that they are running. And then we'll kick off with the session. Why don't we start with yourself, Laurent? Let's see where we're at.
Yeah, sure, friend. Thanks, Pauline, and great to be here today. So my background is, as you mentioned, wealth management. Been spending 15 years for one of the largest private banks in the world in general roles, mostly relating with helping banks to better serve the client, distribution, marketing, and all of it always with data, technology, and analytics. And we founded Better Trade-Off with a belief and a mission that by leveraging technology, we could just simplify financial planning. So that what it means is making it possible for anyone, regardless of net worth, financial acumen, you name it, to make better financial decisions and therefore improve the life and life of their loved one. And it came from a very simple question, which was, most of us, we know what we want: a healthy, happy family, children going to the best school, nice, comfortable home, travel, happy, fulfilling retirement. So all of this is very clear. What is less clear, and for most of us, we don't know, is how do we get there? So how much I take to get there? How much do I need to save, invest? Will I sustain the lifestyle I desire? How much is needed to protect? So all those uncertainty result in many not knowing how much is enough, anxiety, and being underinvested and underprotected. So you end up with, and the answer to this is financial planning. So financial planning has been around since 1950. It's a process designed to help people answer those tough questions. But traditional financial planning is complex, sometimes unreliable, and usually seen only for the rich. And so the question was, how to bring that to a market where not knowing prevent people from taking action and prevent them from having a better life. So there's an inclusion, financial inclusion aspect of it. And if you just look at Singapore, 18% of Singaporeans had consulted a financial advisor when we did a survey in 2017, but 56% that they were still not confident to have enough to retire, which tells you an issue of looking for answers but not finding them. And the reason why it was very difficult. So we use advanced analytics and all the technology, all that what data and technology brings to enable anyone comprehensive financial planning and therefore being able to take decisions. And we do that with bank, insurance. We do that with up advisors, with large financial advisory firm and individual financial advisors. Very happy to be in a pilot project, industry pilot project with MS on this one. And also offering a kind of self-service solution for free to anybody starting in Singapore on Up. The whole idea has been, when we build these companies, to ensure that everyone, everywhere, in every country is able to have access to much better financial decision. And we do that in Singapore, Hong Kong, Philippines, UAE, Switzerland, you name it, many countries. And I think that for us, that conviction that once people know what they have to do in a transparent, easy way, it helps them to take a decision, helps them to save, invest, protect their family, and feel also that they don't have to be so anxious about the future. And I think with the COVID-19 has been a very clear revelation that people need to have a plan.
Perfect, thank you, Ron. That's exactly, I think, the level of detail that our audience will really interested to see the sort of fintechs that we're generating in Asia, but obviously here in Singapore as well. So why don't we start with you, Ashish? I'll continue, not start. Continue with you, Ashish.
Pauline, I think Ashish is not here.
All right, okay, all right. No worries, so Chandrima.
So, Pauline, really appreciate the short, sweet introduction that you gave. And, Laurent has painted a very nice picture of what's going on in the market. So for me, my tech journey, so I have been in technology and financial services for over 2 decades. And in Singapore, Hong Kong, in London, and various other markets. I started my in Bombay, my working life in Bombay. So after working in traditional financial institutions for about 20 years, I felt the power of tech, and given whatever was happening in US and in other parts with the robo-advisors, to what the power that it could bring to an end consumer. So sometime in late 2015, I quit my job, did 6 months of homework about what was doing to wallets of individuals like myself. And in early 2016, I set up Bento. So Bento was one of the first enterprise SaaS wealth tech companies. The objective was not to fight against the banks or brokers. The objective was to work with them, integrate with their systems. So we were very lucky to work with the largest consumer bank in Thailand, some of the big brokers. And sometime in about a year and a half ago, Grab approached us. They quite liked what we do. They wanted to roll out investments and wealth in multiple markets. And we had a transaction about a year and a bit ago. So my objective has always been to bring very high caliber, institutional grade wealth management solution to the masses. And that objective can be fulfilled by nobody bigger than Grab, given the platform that they have all across Southeast Asia. So the acquisition happened sometime in November last year, just before COVID. And then from then we are integrated in Singapore, and we went live with the first Save As You Grow micro savings platform with Grab sometime in September. So super excited to be here, have attended every single FinTech festival, and very excited, super happy. So thank you very much.
Thank you for that introduction, and we'll dig a little bit deeper as we go along as well on that. So okay, so now, Joshua, it would be fantastic to hear about File. Slightly different. Here we're talking about the CFO stack, but also servicing a segment, which is SMEs. That is an interesting one, and where we see hopefully a key segment that will help us get over this pandemic and get the economy back on track.
Right. Thank you so much, Pauline. Excited to be here as part of the Singapore FinTech Festival. I'm Yash, founder and CEO of File. File is essentially an intelligent expense management platform focusing on small and medium-sized businesses. Again, to give a little bit of color, we started File as a means to address a personal frustration. As individuals, we've all gone through the horrors and sort of frustrations of submitting expense reports within our own organization, and I used to be one of those as well, and really wanted to create something that's fit for this generation, as opposed to being involved in or sort of using applications that sort of magically transported you back in time. Again, expense management is a fairly old sort of problem. It's a well-aware problem. The other side of it is also well accepted. So it's almost like people accept that pain, and they stop looking for something better. So expense management, especially in the context of SMEs and mid-market companies, are also in a very similar sort of mindset, which is it people have sort of been conditioned to believe that it is a manual process, it is frustrating process, it sort of requires people to set aside time either on a weekend or on a working day to sort of submit the reports, right? So that's how File started. It initially was not even meant to be a product, let alone a company. It was started to address that personal frustration. We started in 2016. Started in India, catering to the Indian sort of market, which up until 2019 is what we were focused, on. Um, since mid 2019, we've shifted focus to sell to SMB mid-market companies in the US. It is the largest, sort of homogeneous market in the world. We have over 500 customers, across 17 different countries, but we focus on companies in the US, SMB and mid-market companies in the US. And the way we do this is fairly different from standard sort of solutions where we try and blend in expense management inside applications that people are already familiar with. So you can, file an expense inside of Gmail, inside of Outlook, inside Slack, Microsoft Teams, WhatsApp. So in the sense that we make it extremely easy and decouple it with discipline. So you don't need to be disciplined in order to, manage your money with File. It's a single click process for the end user, and a lot of sort of complexity which involves around company spend controls, policies, guidelines, fraud. All of that is sort of powered through our machine learning system, which gives finance and the CFO, and the CFO office, so to speak, a more streamlined, clear, accurate visibility and control of what is happening. We integrate with company cards. So, companies using corporate cards, prepaid cards, can seamlessly manage that spend for better visibility within File. And right now we are in the works of partnering with several banks in the US to sort of be part of their card offering. And that becomes easy for banks to offer a seamless experience to their customers. At the same time, we've seen when card spend is managed better, spend on those cards, you see a higher amount of spend on those cards. So we're trying to bring the best of both worlds by partnering with leading financial institutions in the US to offer better and more delightful sort of experience for SMEs, which in turn sort of helps everyone be less frustrated with respect to managing expense reports. Again, this is one of those things that is not core to anybody, but ends up frustrating a lot of people within a company and so on. So that's the problem that we are sort of tackling. We've raised capital from institutions like Tiger Global Management, Stelview Capital, Recruit Holdings, BNext, and Praviga Ventures. And as I said, we're using that capital to expand into the US.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that overview. So following that, I think the audience now starts to get a feeling about the variety of verticals that we offer in the region. We're very well known in the region, and fintech generally is very well known as payments. Payments is typically an entry point where fintechs gain customer data. It's pretty forward to download as an app. So if we talk a little bit more about the region, so just to put it into context, so Asia overall, from an equity funding perspective in fintech, represents actually a pretty high 30%. The US being roughly about 50, and roughly a little bit over 50, and Europe the rest. So we're well known obviously for some of our technology giants like Ant and so on, but the region differs, right? The region is pretty broken into, you have East Asia, you have South Asia, Southeast Asia, obviously where we are here, really a large unbanked population. Again, to put it into context, about in some countries, large countries like the Philippines and Indonesia, you have up to 50% unbanked population and a young population, digital savvy. We also have Australia, where has seen a large number of equity funding being poured into their neobanks on the back of the new license issued by APRA a few years ago. So could you talk us a little bit more about the variety, the difference in these sub-regions, and what it says, give a bit of more of detail in terms of the type of population that we have, the type of fintechs that we have, and the variety as well in approaches from the regulators that we're seeing. So maybe, Laurent, if we start by you, be good to get specifically around Southeast Asia. You've been deploying in the Philippines, you mentioned, as well, and in Singapore and Hong Kong. So it'd be really good to hear your point of view starting with that.
Thanks, Pauline. So regarding the funding, yes, it's true that we're in a better situation than 5 years ago. And I must say, Singapore FinTech Festival, and at least in Singapore, we can see a huge support from the government to establish an ecosystem. And that does help. We've been fundraising. So one of our investors is Post Finance in Switzerland, coming from the traditional private banking background. But on the when it comes to the region, it's very important to notice that there are different markets with very different demographics. And so at the end of the day, you need to make sure that your offering adapt to those markets and what really matters to the different population and segment. Philippines is different from Singapore and Hong Kong, obviously, but the topics which really matters are about the same. At the end of the day, we all follow the same curve. We all have families to take care of. It's just a question of what is acceptable, what is your cost to serve, what is the population situation, and fundamentally also what the existing distribution networks. So you will see places where a few local banks dominate the market, some others where it's much more distributed. There will be different level of banking experience and insurance experience in many countries. For example, you will have different expectation in terms of your ability to retire based on the mandatory schemes that are created by the different countries. You will have different situation in Philippines. That when we did that with a large insurance there, their clients had 2.4 source of income on average. So one job, an extra job, and a gig on the side. And interestingly enough, they were earning as much as the high earners. So understanding really the composition of the dynamic of the market is critical. That being said, every market has different actors with different positioning, and what really matters is to ensure that you serve this market and the strengths of your partner properly. And it could be in property, it could be in retirement, it could be in protection, in life insurance, education, financing, you name it. Every market has a very different ballgame, and they're literally driven by the history of the industry and the regulatory environment. But in the end, the key point is everyone wants to know what's going to happen in the future, plan to have a better life, and they want to take action in confidence. And I believe this is the one thing we have seen everywhere, consistently, irrespective, is through advisors, is through self-servicing online, is through banking RMs, you name it. The answer is always the same. Once I know, and I'm convinced I know what it is I need to do, then people take action. And I think the worst for most people is not taking action because they are not even aware of what they need to do and what they could do. We see, for example, in places where you have people with less means and really living paycheck by paycheck, it might be difficult to convince yourself that this little extra saving and investment you do every month will make a difference. But once people understand it, you see the same reaction. They want to do something about it. And I believe this is one constant we have seen everywhere in Asia, and in fact in Europe or UAE, where we have also deployed the similar. We are all human beings, and we all have fundamental needs that needs to be covered. And our life is more and more financial. Every aspect of our life will have a financial aspect. The problem is, how do I make it work? And so, if I look at it, that's one thing. The second thing is probably when we look at the actors. Interestingly enough, there's a huge variance in terms of maturity working with startups and fintech in particular. You can see people who are very well structured, understand how it works, have passed, and have organized themselves to be able to work with startups. Others who are more discovering it. The one constant, it takes time. And I think that's probably one of the places where we see some of the actors in the market in Asia moving quite fast. And I believe they will have a better position in the future when it comes to the digitalization and ability to serve the market in a cost-effective manner.
So this is Laurent. That was interesting. This is Laurent from the incumbent side.
Sorry, I don't hear you.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying here you're referring to the incumbents. So some of the incumbent players are the ones that you feel like are well set up to work with fintech. So they've allocated a team that potentially works and understands at the speed of a fintech would do.
I think it's never at the speed of a fintech. We can do much faster.
Yeah.
Sure. But I think that we see some actors who structure themselves and put in place a mechanism to be able to work, while others are still discovering. Just to say, as an incumbent, it still remains a lengthy process, let's put it this way, to move from initial creation to proof of business to the point where we deploy it, which is going to happen in January for 2 of our clients in Singapore and Malaysia, for example.
Okay, that's good to hear. So Chandrima, your views on the region.
Sorry, I missed that, Pauline.
Your views on the region. So we were just speaking about the differences in the region, just to really highlight the sophistication and richness of where we're sitting.
Yeah, in the region, while when I talk to my counterparts in other markets that have a very large catchment area, maybe, like Asia seems as very homogeneous and single market. But if you look at places like Singapore, Hong Kong, quite mature, the investor base, the user base is constantly doing comparisons, whereas Indonesia and maybe Malaysia, maybe to some extent Malaysia has been very led by e-commerce. So we find the e-commerce, we are starting to see the e-commerce giants plug in with payments. And then when payments gather data on what, and they can use the rich data to target, then they come out with verticals such as micro insurance or micro wealth or maybe lending and other parts. So it is the payments that anchors the customers, and then the whole infra is built with other products. And the products can be, as I mentioned, these three. So each market is different. Like Singapore is matured enough to have a few direct B2C players in all of these verticals, whereas in many markets we are starting to see integrated solutions like in Indonesia. So in terms of how in the past we have worked, in my past life with Bento, I found Thai banks and brokers in Thailand and Philippines to be super open to working with other fintech, and seems like Laurent has a very similar experience. In Singapore, there is more of debate of should we buy or should we build, and we have been in several very long drawn conversations on that. But yeah, so it's a very diverse and complicated set of markets. Maturity on the S curve of users it goes from very low maturity and huge user base on low penetration like Indonesia to very matured markets like Singapore, and which is what is the excitement in this whole region. It is it's the ability to target businesses that are in the spectrum. You can find them everywhere, be it product maturity or user or user needs, and also margins. In markets like Singapore, there is a lot of freebies. In markets like Philippines, the margins are still very rich. So it's a three-dimensional complex market.
No, and I'd like to give as well for the audience some context on some of the forecast numbers for Southeast Asia specifically. So by 2030, we're forecasted to generate a GDP of $4.3 trillion and also be the third largest bloc after India and China, which is phenomenal. Okay. So now for Josh, you're sitting in India, and obviously, again, for the last 2-3 years, has seen quite a number of initiatives from the government that has moved the population to a cash economy, from a cash economy to a digital economy, to a cashless society. Could you talk to us a little bit about some of the differences in the region that we're seeing there, and why fintech, what the role of fintech has played?
Right. So, firstly, I think India is a very, I would say, a convoluted market of sorts, right? There are multiple markets within this large market,
Mm.
And it's a very early market. It's almost at its infancy, I would say, right? Even though we've had, and I think the other aspect of this, dichotomy is the fact that tech has played an extremely vital role in sort of getting a vast population from a cash driven economy to a less cash economy, right? So it's still not cashless, it's just less
Mm.
cash, right? People are finding it more and more convenient to sort of pay using their mobile phones, and with that, I think there are 2-3 key trends that we've sort of observed over the last 2-3 years, right? One is definitely just the adoption of technology, because internet rates have been tremendously subsidized. It's probably one place in the world where you get 4G internet at really really cheap prices, right? Second, with that there is awareness, right, which is just the consumption. Earlier it used to be a lot more restrictive. Just consumption of just sort of taken off the roof, right? And it's also a very fairly poor country, right? So if you look at you have the top 1%, you have the top 10%, you have the bottom sort of 80%, right? So the needs of each of these markets are very very different, and um, fintechs play a sort of vital role, again depending upon what part of that pyramid or what part of that segment they're sort of approaching, and what problem in that pyramid are they looking to solve. You mentioned that earlier, payments is sort of sort of like a gateway drug of sorts, right? So everyone starts with payments, but payments is unsustainable when you're actually competing with a regulator, right? So it sort of becomes very very difficult to just sort of make a business just out of payments. So you now start to focus on value creation or value, or specific problem solving for each of these parts of that stack. And in the last, I think, 2 years, we've started seeing some trends around that, because it's not just payments, but you've sort of seeing investments in bookkeeping. You've sort of seeing investments in just digitizing a large amount of workflow within that stack, right? And again, it could be vertical specific, it could be horizontal application. There's a lot of push from the regulator on aspects like account aggregation, which makes it easy for wealth management companies to offer a more holistic sort of approach. Otherwise there's a lot of uploading and downloading that happens, which is not useful. But as I said, I think it's extremely early, even for a market as large as India. Despite the amount of equity funding that we've seen, I think it's very early, and it's also many markets put together in one. And each of those markets over time can be an exceptionally large market. Considering the economy is also growing, it sort of brings a lot more people, into that working sort of fold. And despite all this, India is a very young country, right? The average age is very, very less compared to, the likes of other more mature, economies, right? So I think with that in mind, um, it is it is extremely early. At the same time, the prospect of building multiple billion-dollar businesses in this space is very very real. We've already seen a couple of fintech companies become unicorns from India, more in 3 to 5 years, especially from the fintech space.
Fantastic. Thank you for that overview. So as many of you know by now, I'd like to switch now, because on Friday at 6:30 p.m. The Singapore the MAS announced for digital banking license. So this has been going on for a while. I think it was last year, end of June, where the MAS announced that they were they were going to make it available, this digital licenses. With that, I think it'll be really interesting, especially since, you look at your Monzos, your Oak North on the lending side, your Starling and so on. Typically, digital challenger banks from a product perspective, it's very, very, very retail. But how do you foresee, as well for those that are offering products to SME, how do you foresee the integration? I mean, kind of a different story for you, Chandrima, but it'd be also really good to hear the how quick the integration happened with Grab. But it'd be really good to hear your point of view on how do you build products or a product roadmap that includes some of these CFO stack products and also wealth management, financial planning products.
Pauline, this whole series of the challenger banks is going to be a bit different from others. And that's
Correct.
because the CASA margins are so tight. So usually, even when I saw my ex-employer ING launch the digital bank in Philippines, that they went in for a very high CASA rate. So their client acquisition has always been with high CASA rate, which is like blitz marketing. And the days of blitz marketing are over. We don't have that kind of that mindset anymore. It itself has become a bit of a bad word. So, so I expect the drive to acquire customer would be driven by providing, like, say, a holistic view of how much insurance they need. And as Lohan was talking about. And I also see a lot of micro-sized investment solutions, insurance solutions, or maybe micro lending to drive the whole consumer base. Because I mean, as a part of Grab, which is also one of the awardees of the license, I'm quite excited when the bank goes live, and we would be, and as the invest entity, we hope to work with them, with the customer base, to come out with investment solutions that are driven by the bank. Now, I think this wave of the banks that come in would be lesser about providing cashback, because the days of 5%, 20% cashback are diminished, and also that the rates of giving 2% rates on your deposits, those that the regulator has already not allowed for. It has to be very innovative. It has to benefits the customer, and it has to be driven by a solution that is not a one-trick pony, but that covers multiple aspects of an individual's life. I think this wave is where the real excitement is, because the net interest margins are so low. This is where the innovation will come into play. I'm so excited. This is, we will see way more than what we saw with the Monzos or the Sterlings or with Marcus.
Yeah. No, so and that's a really good point. I mean, I'd love to hear a little bit more as well, because I think that the whole industry, I mean, to be honest, I walk the corridors of FinTech a lot, and when we heard about your integration, which I think took 3 months, with Grab, that was, that just blew everybody away. Yeah, you mentioned Marcus. Marcus has made a number, I think 7 or 8 acquisitions of digital wealth management companies. I haven't really heard much of the detail about how the integration went, but would love to hear you speak a little bit more about that integration and how fast they moved as a technology company.
So the benefit that and the reason why I was so excited about being acquired by Grab is because they had the ecosystem which is unparalleled in this part of the world. And when I spoke to various parts of Grab, the hunger and the ability to target and go live, the speed that they had was outstanding. So when we fitted right in terms of speed and the mindset and wanting to do the right thing by the consumer. So it was a complex integration, because investments, you cannot have broken pipes in investments. We did not have a system integrator, and I remember Lohan referencing to partnership with system integrators or consultants. We did not have one, but what we had on our side is when we did the acquisition, my whole ethos was we will leave no person behind. So every individual who worked with Bento today are working with Grab. And we had works with banks that are quite slow to integrate. And with some commercial bank, we went live with, I think, 3 months. Now with after being fully settled, when we started the work, from being settled to started the work going live, it was about 3+ months. But it was intense. It was hard. But the tailwind and the runway that we had, because working in an organization that is so hungry to do the right thing, is what made it happen. And what we did is, there's no point having a Me Too product when there is so much room for innovation. So what was lacking in our parts of the world is, to do investments, I have to earmark hours of my Sunday, and I have to compare. I have to talk to my friends who know investment. They actually may not know much. And it's really hard. And then the penetration of wealth products is as low as 5%. So what we did is, how do we build trust by getting rid of the initial inhibitions? So what we did is lowest common denominator of risk and lowest common denominator in amount. Start with the lowest risk product and start with $1. So every time, and Grab has so many use cases, every time you order food or you do deliveries or you make payments, you use your QR or you get a ride, just put in a small amount of money without you having to do research into an investment account. And I wish I could show my screen. I started today, I have something like $1,000. And I'm not a big user of Grab. And it is not that I'm ordering food. So it puts the wallet to use. That means it pulls the money from the wallet without me taking a massive decision every time, puts it to investment with likes of Fullerton and UOB. And whenever I need that money, I can pull it back into my wallet and spend it where I want. It's like the traditional piggy banks that we forgot about, where we keep putting in coins and one day we break it and we have got $500, $600. So it's the digitalized 3-step onboarding version of that use case.
Fantastic. That's fantastic and a great way to explain it. I'm sure many of our audience didn't know the detail on how it worked. So Laurent, I think for you, what's the opportunity with the digital banks announcements and more broadly? I mean, obviously we're the first one in Southeast Asia to announce such a license, but Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia are next. So how do you see yourself for BTO?
So we're very excited, obviously, because I believe it will bring more competition, which might not be seen as beneficial on the margin, maybe immediately. But I do believe that it will help Singapore to remain at the forefront of innovation. And I think many countries, it will democratize access to services. And today, I thought what was mentioned just before was totally true. A lot of people need to be introduced in the notion of long-term plan, wealth management, invest, that just don't save, start saving first and then invest. And those little steps make a big difference over a long time. But if you want to really help a large portion of the population to benefit from investment, long-term investment, from protection, from property, from education, you need to demonstrate why it is not that risky, why does it make a difference, and most importantly, why those things come together. And what was mentioned was very important. Making good for your customers. And I think at the end of the day, that's going to be probably the acid test for all the digital banks. You have established players who have demonstrated trust, who have an installed base of clients, and who can serve segments sometime well, sometime less well. But for those new players, they have to establish themselves as a credible alternative. And so what are you offering which is different from what are those people giving? And I think that the entry point is different, but I also believe that the need will be the same as what we have seen in countries which have started the digital license much earlier. You need to differentiate yourself. And I absolutely believe that we need to move from a product-oriented view, from a client-oriented view where it's a solution to a problem. And now the difficulty is, how do I explain it? So when you pay, it's very clear. I make a payment for a good, that's obvious. That's kind of, everybody's used to it. When it comes to wealth products, which can be also lending, by the way, it's a much more complicated thing because it's much more long term. So getting people to start, like what is being done by Grab, great. Getting the next level where people start looking long term and seeing the benefits, having this long term view and understanding how it makes a difference, we believe going to make a real difference. The second aspect where it's going to be interesting is the data driven innovation. Today, your understanding of your clients is not that great. Your clients only share what you have with you, declaration are done once a year or when you open your account. You might have data from your payments through a credit card, but fundamentally what you're missing is an overview of the situation of your clients and the ability to discuss with them. And once you have that, the beauty of it is life is not just a straight line. Yes, up, down, your kids go to college. It's really, and you have COVID-19 happening. And what happens if I lose my job? And if you use a solution on Up, for example, in Singapore, Upline.sg, you are able to simulate what happens. And I think that's the interesting part is we have all the tools as products to serve our client better, but we lack the information and we make it very complicated to serve our clients in a differentiated way. You can do that if you're a private bank, wealth individual, time, money, but it becomes much more difficult to scale. And that's where we came in with better trade-off and with our clients being institutional, financial institution, and also obviously neobank or digital banks, is this ability to deliver service at scale. And I think the very important part of the financial inclusion at the end of the day is to allow everybody to be able to take decisions for their future, not just a transaction, not just lending money because I need it for next month, but really looking at your wealth as a means to live a better life. And so if you look at this, I do believe that it's going to be interesting to see how fast new innovative products will be able to benefit from that. So that would be my two takeaway.
No, fantastic. No, I absolutely agree with you. I think we're really going to benefit in the region. Having incorporated my company in 2008, I not only struggled to get a personal account, but also a corporate account. And Josh, on your side, obviously, I think we have 2 wholesale banking licenses, digital licenses here. What do you see the opportunities for you as digital banking becomes even more prominent here in Southeast Asia?
Right. So I think it's interesting to see more and more tech first. You can call them digital banks, but the only difference between digital banks and traditional banks is how fast banks can move and how quickly they can make decisions by using data, right? And it's a very different sort of appeal to younger customers who want things to happen at the speed of TikTok or Instagram or so on and so forth, right? And I think once that initial sort of problem of giving them access to, let's say, a banking account, savings account, investments account, banks make money with SMEs, right? Whether it's through lending, whether it's through and the SMEs are also a source of low cost capital with checking accounts, current accounts, and so on and so forth, right? But to attract more and more SMEs to to the challenger banks or the neo banks, you need to have products that solve specific problems for SMEs, right? And again, I can talk about the B2B context. I really believe that this decade will see banks becoming platforms of full stack software offering for their customers to solve various problems that SMEs face, and because that will turn out to be a differentiator. So banks have things that younger companies will take years and years to get, which is trust, right? Which I think is a great way to sort of capitalize on and also solve real problems, right? And the age of large banks or even banks working with sort of services sort of providers which actually build software based on a bank's specifications, which ends up becoming multi-year projects, will sort of be sunsetted. Instead, what I'm hopeful for is banks and large financial institutions start partnering with innovative companies to offer software which is also changing at lightning speed, right?
Mm.
Not really a services kind of so the banking software, I'm not talking about the software that banks use, but softwares that bank will offer. I think that is something that we will start seeing more and more in this decade. And almost like it could, you could talk, sort of think of it like a marketplace of
Yep.
software applications vetted by the bank for their customers. Again, or not through payments, but really focused on solving problems for customers as opposed to just thinking about products, right? And I love what Lauren said about thinking about customers. At the end of the day, it's about problems that customers face, and banks can get closer and closer and earn a higher, sort of again return, or increase trust by solving these core problems. And I think that's where, whether it's a digital bank or a traditional bank, um, I am very hopeful that this is the direction that we'll start seeing, where banks become a trusted platform for software that is offered to their customers, which is vetted by them.
Pauline, does this sound like Apex?
That does. Definitely does. So thanks for highlighting that, because we don't have a lot of time, and there was so much we still wanted to discuss around COVID and the impact on your business model. But you mentioned Apex, and I'd like to bring it back. Obviously, as a fintech hub here in Singapore, we've developed a number of conducive to innovation regulations since the first launch of the Singapore FinTech Festival in 2016. So celebrating 5 years of it, and we've developed Apex, obviously the marketplace for B2B fintechs to help financial institutions leapfrog in their adoption of technology. So I'd like to get to 1 minute of your time to get your views on how do we remain a fintech hub, Asia, and I guess for those in Singapore. Why don't we start with you, Chandrima?
Well, I think Singapore, I have seen Singapore evolve literally as I grew and evolved as an entrepreneur in the past 4 years. So from the first, the FinTech Festival, which we did not know what it was about. We just did not know, and we went in there and we said FinTech is an industry, and like oil and gas, and this is a new, conference, so we all went for it. So now we are talking about verticals, we are talking about integration, and a maturity of the ecosystem is seen that now we are also talking enterprise SaaS, where the banks partner with tech companies. And so now, we can, I see Singapore, just like Luxembourg is the whole ecosystem for the funds industry. And Singapore or Geneva are the second and the first largest ecosystem for wealth management. Singapore is one of the best ecosystem for fintech because it has mature banks, it has access to Southeast Asia and beyond. We can do, it has access to capital. There is a lot of money that flows into it, being a wealth center. And now a lot of wealth is also moving to non-listed markets or private markets. So you have got test cases, you've got access to market, and you have got people, the amount of training for the universities have put in for specific skill sets of tomorrow is not trivial. So all the building blocks that I see is building for a perfect storm for Singapore to continue to be a fintech platform. Like 4 years ago, I can't imagine anybody associate Singapore with fintech, and look at where we are today with the fifth conference. How amazing has this been?
Yeah, absolutely. Great, thank you for that. So Josh, from your side, and we'll probably get cut off, but let's just spend 2 minutes.
Yeah, so I think Asia is like we've discussed, it's several markets sort of put together, and they're at different ages, and the next wave is going to be seen. We'll see two trends. One is how companies are quickly able to adapt to just managing processes to sort of going and the next level of automating sort of processes. So whether we look at it as in the B2C world or even the B2B world, we will see the next level, which is management will pay way to automation, and all of that will the ability to use data in a context aware manner, which is extremely important in any kind of application, right? So I think that is what I am exceptionally sort of positive about, and not just within the fintech sort of space, but it's it's a trend. And the markets, from whatever I know, we've seen Singapore to sort of be like the trendsetter in terms of regulations, so that other sort of markets can sort of adopt, whether it is ease of doing business, or or just setting up various aspects of your company domiciled in Singapore. But like I said, in general, Asia is a very exciting place to be at this point in time. And over in time, we'll also see some really, really big and interesting exits coming out of this part of the world, which can rival the ones that we see in the US.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's here hoping, and I'm sure we will. Laurent, final words from you.
Yeah, I think that very lucky to have been in the region and 15 years in Singapore, in Asia. And it's an incredible place because you see a conjunction of will, of foresight, and ability to execute from all different actors, starting with the government. I agree, Singapore FinTech Festival is an incredible accelerator for Singapore. And I do believe that when you're in Singapore, you also benefit from a brand, as a way Germany has been a brand for quality in cars, and France for luxury products and the like. I think Singapore bring great assets in terms of intangible assets. I believe that the story will continue evolving, and I trust that we, as a startup and as a fintech, for us being located in Singapore has never been a prime to extend in Asia, obviously, but beyond Asia. And I think that's a part of the ambition, is to reach out to the rest of the world and not constrain yourself only to a few markets. Needless to say, when you're in Singapore, work in Malaysia, Indonesia, or Hong Kong, it's much easier than when you go to UAE, where you need to have a presence, and because you have distance. But I believe that today, when I look at it and look at the track record, I'm very optimistic for the future. I can see a lot of new potential with the data and how we use them to serve clients better, innovation in terms of products and business models, and the ability to concentrate the attention of people who matters. And I think that's great. I mean, I've never had any prime to find someone willing to relocate in Singapore to do something fun. So it's a great advantage to be here.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree and echo everybody's feedback. Definitely a fantastic place to be, and the buzz is really real, and really loved the fact that as soon as the pandemic hit, the entire ecosystem mobilized themselves to make sure that everybody was okay, from a funding perspective, from a training perspective, and we created opportunities around deals as well. So I think all in all, very excited for the next 5 years. Also, I'm going to do a bit of a plug for my friend Varun Mittal, who's just written a book called Singapore, the FinTech Nation. It really you'll find some of the people here who were on the book. It really details the story from when the idea came back in another conference, and how quickly how everybody mobilized themselves, from the banking association all the way to the fintechs, to the MAS, and all the partners ecosystems to take us where we are today. So really encourage everybody to read it. It's a absolutely fun read. Thank you, and I hope you've learned a lot in this session. I certainly have, and have a fantastic Singapore FinTech Festival week. There is 24 hours, 5 days of content. And I think you'll be having a lot of coffees and Red Bulls to be able to watch it all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to spend the Monday morning with you all.
Yes, it was great. Thanks, Shalina.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.